everything. So I think it's closest to the blue zone I could have been. I spent about a week there. One of my friends, she owns a house, so something worth
Brilliant,
considering.
brilliant. So, I can totally relate to it because my wife is from Solan in Himachal and she has a village in Palampur,
Wow.
among the tea gardens. So, totally relate to that.
Yeah.
And that's definitely also blues. And guys, thank you so much. So all of you who are seeing us live on different channels, this was some back of the stage conversations. Thank you so much. We have three fantastic speakers. We're going to begin now. We have Malinda, we have Ashwin, and we have Aman Gupta. And we're going to have a lot of fun today chatting with our fabulous speakers today. Let me introduce our first speaker, Ashwin. Ashwin is a techie. He has spent many years in India and studied BTech from India. He's also a CEO of a company called AI Connect, and they are into AI on radiology. So they have Ashwin also run a couple of other companies. One a second company Ashwin run is called the Go.
AlgoVision.
Yeah, the Go. Yeah, the Go Vision. Yeah. So sorry for that. So I want to ask the first question to Ashwin. Ashwin, how are you able to run two companies? Like, when should an entrepreneur run two companies? When is the entrepreneur ready to run two companies?
Yeah, but the honest answer is right now I don't. Actually, my partner's running it actually, AlgoVision. Yeah, but I would be available when needed. Yeah, that's it's difficult. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we are not Elon Musk yet, so we have to build the company from grounds up. So yeah, we have to do a lot more work for the company. Yeah.
So, I was asking this question to one of my mentors, and I asked him, when am I ready to start my second company? He said, when you don't talk to your clients, then you're ready to start a second company. If you're talking to clients, that's not ready. So is that true? Is that a good parameter, good benchmark?
Yeah, so yeah, correct. I mean, you got to day in, day out, talk to client. There's no escape from it. And without that, we can't even build a company. I mean, no clients, no understanding of business. And when you're building just a glass or inside a glass or something, yeah.
So my first question, Ashwin, to you is, since you are in AI and in the health tech, what changes AI going to bring in the health tech in the years to come?
Yeah, so see, AI is going to be transformative for healthcare. And this is going to actually, the main problem, I would say, just take India statistics, right? So like, tier 2, tier 3 cities, population about, anything about 750 million people, okay? And about a lot of them, like, I'll take it like about 500 million are still deprived of a quality healthcare. Okay, so that's the magnitude of problem that we are facing, where we are not able to deliver the good healthcare to the population, right? So, and that is possible only if the transformative things like AI comes into picture, where because AI doesn't distinguish, it never tires, and it continuously improves. So and that's definitely, I think that's why I seen that healthcare is the best field to apply AI, because the problem is real and we need to reach to the people. Okay.
Thank you for the intro question, Ashwin. Thank you very much. I'll go to my next speaker, Malinda. Malinda has been a fantastic advisor to a lot of health tech companies in the US, and she spent about 25 years helping companies in planning, strategy, sales, marketing, business development. Malinda, so since you are working as an advisor, helping health tech companies in advising, what do you advise them on?
So it's a range of different things. So just from a background perspective, I actually come from the pharma world. And so with an understanding of how pharma, like my last role at Johnson & Johnson, for example, how can you apply it in a digital world, right? And so a lot of the work is, how do you take these small companies to be able to build and scale them, right? So that they become true strategic partners and enablers of the cruise ships. So I think of it as the smaller companies are jet skiers that are able to go very fast. They're agile. And so I help them with anything from what's their growth strategy, what's their funding strategy, what investors do you want or not want in your portfolio, which I think is very, very important, all the way through financial planning, executions, licensing agreements, revenue forecasts. So it's a range of applying my background and my career experiences on R&D, commercial, supply chain, finance, bringing it together to, again, build companies in healthcare specifically.
Brilliant. So these are some wonderful advice that she is giving to health tech companies out there. Taking her cue and going to Aman. Aman has been a PR guy from day one. I think in the year 2000, he was able to establish a PR company specifically focusing on healthcare and health tech. And public relations is being ignored by a lot of startups. How important is PR for startups?
Okay, so Amit, as I said, if you look at anything which we are doing as an organization, as a brand, till the time you are not able to engage with your stakeholders to tell them the relevance, the benefit, and the value proposition, then whatever you're doing is in your own room. Nobody is really able to. If you need to scale things up, you need to showcase the relevance and the benefit of it. And at each stage, the relevance and benefit to different stakeholders may change. So if I'm an early stage organization, I need to reach out to my early stage investors to say why my technology, my service, my offering has a potential to get mainstream. And that's what sort of convinces the people to say, yes, I'm going to invest. As you move up the value stream, you have a product, you have created a certain set of market for it. But then if you need to really scale it up, you need to sort of showcase the fact that it has a relevance. Just to give you an example, we talk about genomic or genetic testing as one of the things which is growing. But if I look at a market like India, people still do not understand the value of genetic testing and how it could possibly help in early diagnosis of the disease in the future. Now, you have one thing saying I exist and I'm giving you something which is of huge value, but till that time communication doesn't come in and explain to the larger public the value proposition which exists, and therefore I'm willing to buy your offering, then I will not be able to scale up. So the idea of public relation is that how do you really engage with different publics, which could be your consumer, it could be policymakers, it could be your internal employees because I want you to be part of my team. It could be the healthcare professionals because I need to engage with you. It could be a pharma industry with whom I can work in terms of your research and development. So any public you need to engage with, how do you build your relation? How do you engage? How do you tell your story to them for them to collaborate with you in your journey is a part of any success of any business. Any business which is not able to understand the fact that your communication has to be at the core of your thinking from the day one may not be able to scale it up.
Brilliant. Now, PR is definitely very important, but a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of startups ignore PR. Why do you think they ignore PR?
See, most of the entrepreneurs are usually wedded to the technology which they're bringing in. They're not really the communicators, right? They are scientists, they are product evangelists. They are the people who love the technology part of it, the science part of it, right? So they say, if I have a great science, I have a great offering, it should do the, how do you say, it's the right mantra for me to succeed. But the fact is that if you have the right product, but if you're not able to commercialize it, if you're not able to take it to the next level, you'll not be able to scale up. And I think enough global leaders, whether it's Bill Gates to Steve Jobs, everybody has talked about the value of public relations as a tool which any brand needs to, because you are able to build a strong emotional connect with your stakeholders. And when the emotional connect happens, then the value proposition changes. People will still go out and buy an iPhone Pro, which has just been launched, because the fact there is a titanium on the side of it. Does this really make a difference? But yes, I have an emotional connect to the brand, and that connect is because I have a story, and the story engages with me.
Brilliant. Ashwin, what do you think about that? Are you having any PR agency to help you guys grow, have a big relationship?
Yeah, I think I agree with Aman. We are more wedded to technology as opposed to actually talking about it or trying to actually, basically do a lot of PR. I think that's something that would really help because what happens we don't reach the right population. I mean, right people with our value proposition. Okay, so it's a especially countries like in India, so many states and different governments and different actually hospitals. It's very difficult to reach at once and to everybody. Okay, and same issue that we also face even if we go outside India. That is also a vast market, and we don't know how to reach. There are some viral movements that probably can get you that push, but that's hard to come. You cannot design easily. That's what my reading is. If somebody going to tell me if somehow we can be viral so fast, definitely we would love to do that. But yeah, basically those are the challenges that we face. Like how do we talk about what we do? Yeah.
Since Ashwin, come from AI in health tech, I want to understand from you, what are the dangers of AI in health tech and healthcare?
See, first of all, AI is a journey, and you cannot reach that in the first day, and it will take its own time. It could be years, and we need to be ready for it. So while actually when we are actually going through this journey, there may be challenges in the sense that some of the technologies may not work as anticipated, or a lot of expectations are built around the technology, but then it's not ready yet. Okay, so like even when we talk about the Gen AI, right? There are talks of hallucinations, and that may be okay in certain domains like marketing and just image synthesis for marketing, but it's not easy for healthcare, right? So you need to be extremely accurate. You need to go through regulatory clearance, and that's also going to a multi-year journey, and it's not come easily. I think we should also have a right expectation and not actually overthink that it can solve all the problem. It will not solve all the problem. It's just a tool to solve certain problems, but also expect that it doesn't work as anticipated, and then we should make it work over time. The second is about whose data that we are going to use, and we should concern about privacy of the data. We should not intrude on the certain data unless a consent is there. So that's another AI. Sometimes because it requires data, people might misuse the data without the consent, because we are not the rightful owners of the lot of data. We need consent, so we need to also be aware of that. So two things. One is maturity of the technology that itself need to improve, and also ensure that we actually go through right means to develop the AI.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Ashwin. Marinda, my next question to you is: you are on the board of many health tech companies. When you choose a company to advise them and be on their board, what do you look for? What are your non-negotiables?
The first is the team.
Okay.
So
you're saying team is more important than product?
Well, I'm getting there, right? So it comes hand in hand, right? So you have the basis of an idea. And let me take Advanced Health Academy as an example, right? So Nilesh Bhandari is the CEO and founder of it. The product is to disrupt lab testing, right? To be able to take lab testings, to be able to predict and prevent illness, right? Of the 12 organ systems. And so the product is solid, right? But it's the team that actually makes it realizable in terms of being able to reach millions and millions of patients to detect and in advance of an illness, prevent it. So you have to have the product idea, but the execution of the product is based on the team. Right? So that's where I say the team is critical. Is no product is going to fly without it.
Absolutely. So yeah, so the horse is the product and the founder is the jockey. I think jockey is also as important as the horse. What are the mistakes currently founders are doing in the health tech industry? What mistakes are they generally doing in the business, in the health tech?
Being so product so to Aman's work, right, in the PR space, I actually think that awareness of the products is lacking. There's so much disruption is in the digital health space, right? I've made a move from traditional pharma biotech devices to digital health and the marriage of the two, because that is the future, right? It's the access of digital therapeutics on your phone to treat socio-anxiety disorder. If you don't know that exists, how will you access? And so I think brand awareness is absolutely critical, and there needs to be more done around it. I think the other element is education with investors to be able to drive more strategic partnerships. So everyone can't do everything, right? So for example, you take a mental health digital health app, right? So take Arcade Therapeutics, right, who I'm involved with, the one that's addressing socio-anxiety disorder. They have funding from the National Institute of Mental Health and the FDA here in the United States. And if they didn't connect to healthcare systems, how do you actually deliver care and services to the patients in need of it? You don't, right? So that synergy becomes very important.
Interesting. Very good. Next question is to Aman. Aman, you have been working with large organizations like Melinda Gates Foundation, WHO, Johnson & Johnson. What's the secret sauce? How are you able to tap into such big brands and able to work with them?
Well, I think, Amit, working with the bigger brands is an easy ask because for them, this is the part of the core strategy. So if I am working with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which started somewhere in the early 2000s when HIV/AIDS crisis was at its peak as one of the biggest public health challenge, the need to engage with different stakeholders, whether it's by policymakers to say why India needs to have a very robust action strategy against HIV/AIDS, or working along with the at-risk or affected communities. You have to sort of make it happen. So for them, it's kind of an easy, or whether it's a Johnson & Johnson, despite its regulations and compliances and legality, they do need to ensure that they are talking. I would say the bigger need for us and where we sort of have to still continue to educate is the disruptor, the health tech industry, right? And I think as Melinda said, there's a lot of disruptions which is happening and it will continue to happen. It's going to change the way the health ecosystem exists. One thing which we should be very clear is that our current health system is fragmented, right? It's not a one cohesive system where a person can move from one system to another and the care will be continue to remain the same. And what the technology is going to do is it's going to disrupt in that particular space. And I think that disruption is amazing. It will happen. But however, if you are not able to take that disruption to scale, then the disruption remains something which is happening in a lab in a smaller community. And I think to that audience, we are still trying to struggle. And it's like, you need to ensure that you put your enough funding into that system. And you talk to, we work with private equity funds, we talk to VCs, we talk to angel networks, we talk to the startups. That's not the first ask. This is, if I'm getting like a 3 million pre-series A fund, I'm going to deploy that for technology upgradation. I'm going to do to my next, SaaS suite. I'm going to do to for hiring more technical people. But the fact is that if my product is something which is not getting mainstreamed, I'm not going to get the scale up. I'm going to burn more money. And at some point of time, I may not remain the relevant. And the funders will go somewhere else. So that is where I do not have a secret recipe. It's something which I continue to sort of say. I try to sort of shout, saying you need to ensure that you build a strong engagement strategy with your different stakeholders.
Aman, let me ask you a question that I should not ask you. Uh, why should a startup not do PR?
Okay, I think not doing PR is a kind of doing injustice to the idea which you have. An
No,
idea in a
no,
lab remains
no,
a
no, no. I don't want to answer.
I,
No, no, I don't want to answer. There are certain things, for example, let's say startup which are focusing only on their product should not do PR. They should not do PR if it's too expensive. Something which startups can use.
see,
Why
I
should
think
somebody not
so.
do a PR?
Well, I think if you are not doing a PR, if your audience is very minimalistic, if I'm doing in a very B2B space and my audience is limited, then I could try not to do. But understand one thing, public relations or communications, I don't use the word public relations because it's kind of misused in the mainstream, media in a very, very different context. So, it's been giving a bad name. But I say, communicating with your audience is a must. You may not hire an agency. You may do it internally. You may hire a person to do it, or you may become your own spokesperson. But you cannot say, I will not communicate. See, as a brand, you need to talk to your stakeholders. If you're not talking, Amit, then you're not doing justice. So that's, even if you say that why you should not do it, it's then you're not doing justice to what you're doing.
Got it. Got it. Thank you. Thank you for that answer, Aman. Coming to you, Ashwin. Ashwin, you talk about reducing the radiology processing by 70% using AI. How are you able to reduce the time of radiology to say by 70%? I mean, if you can throw some light on it without being so technical, so our audience understand it.
Yeah, so see, we started with this mission of actually making radiology very accessible. So for that to happen today, what's happening is that there's a lot of investment that goes into these machines, and they can only serve certain segment of population, right? So, for example, recently it has been in a newspaper that in AIMS for scanning, there is a waiting time of 1 year for MRI. Okay, so in the very affordability segment, where the patients needs to access the advanced diagnostic methods, it's still a difficult for them because of the lack of infrastructure. So that's where we looked at the problem. How do we make the people accessible this infrastructure? And first thing that we came up with is to reduce the scanning time for MR with the existing machines from about like 40 minutes to 20 minutes. That's cutting down about 50%. So it means that a good center will do about 20-30 scans per day, and they can do 60 scans per day. So straight away we can actually double the population which will have access and cut down the waiting time in the critical segments. So that's the first thing that we did. And the second thing is about the lack of radiologists to support in tier 2, tier 3 cities as well. In also we had there are only few like pediatric radiologists. Okay, there are very few. Okay, but the pediatric radiology is very important. So in that sense, we looked at how do we actually cut down the time radiologists spend in reporting a scan, right? So instead of spending about 20 to 30 minutes, we cut down the time by like 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, so that's again, increases the throughput. And so this enables both reducing the time for the radiologists, and then the reducing the time for the actually patients inside the machine. The third is that more often they don't opt to choose the right slot for their scanning. Okay, so there is still quite a bit of challenge in terms of what time they need to come, how do we slot it so that the machine is optimally utilized. So that's again we again solve that problem. So these are the wherever the bottlenecks are there, we cut down that, and that's actually resulted in reducing the time by 70%. There's another thing, how we share the data with the doctors, the physicians, because they need to have the information right after the scanning, and after the radiologist prepare the report. And that today it's quite manual, they come back, collect the prints or the CDs, and then take them to the doctors. And again, quite a bit of time is actually lost in the whole process. So we are actually in the process. That's how we actually cut down all these bottlenecks and make it faster. So our vision is it should be as good as how do you go through a security check, right? So you drop your bag, go through the security check and pick up your bag. You just walk in, do the scanning, get your report, pick up the report and go back. So that's what we are looking at.
Great. Malinda, stemming out from Ashwin's answer, what are the critical needs of healthcare in developed nations versus critical needs of healthcare in developing nations? Now, Ashwin is trying to reduce the time, and that's more of a problem in countries like Africa where there are less doctors, so you must reduce time so that it can assist doctors. What are critical needs of healthcare in developed nations versus critical needs in developing nations in healthcare?
So I think there's some overlap in the needs of cycle time reduction in terms of access to care, right? Productivity, a place where companies like ZipStack, which received funding from Lightspeed Ventures, right? They're now here in the US. How is it that you can accelerate regulatory filings, right? In terms of, again, driving faster access, whether it's to products or services, is consistent, whichever market you're in, because the need for care is still urgent, right? And so that doesn't change. However, when you look at culturally, I think the Asia Pacific, the Japan market versus the India market versus South America have different cultural acceptances of care. And so with that, you become nuanced in how to position your product. The need is the same, but the cultural barriers to accept that care that can be provided vary. And so it goes back to, again, how is it that you break barriers? Because at the end of the day, the one fixed thing that we know is we're all here for a limited amount of time, whatever that time is, right? And so again, cycle time, productivity, huge areas of focus, but assessments in the digital health space have really taken over. So you're doing preventive care screenings earlier on, but only that percentage of population that is willing to accept that there may be a health nuance are willing to accept it, right? So you still have masses of people that just don't want to deal with it.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Thank you so much, Malinda, for the answer. Aman, coming to you, since you're also helping a lot of health tech companies in PR and other stuff, and also investing in health tech companies, how difficult or easy it is for health tech companies these days to raise money?
I think as of right now, if you say, I think almost everybody is having a problem in terms of raising the money. There is a kind of larger question mark. However, if we look at health as a sector, I think this still is a little bit more easier compared to some of the other sectors, which were at kind of the prime. And I think that largely the reason is that if you have two things, one, if you have a good product which is sustainable and scalable, and the second thing which Melinda talked about in the our earlier answer, the team. Finally, when you go to an investor, the investor is looking for a team. It's not an individual. See, one thing is very clear: it's not an individual; it's a team in its totality. For them, that's very, very important. And the second thing is, do you have a product, and what's the disruption are you bringing in? Is this a disruption which is sustainable, it's scalable, and it has a certain level of monetization as a stage? If you have those things, you have a good thing, but then it also works down to that how many door knocks are you doing? And again, I come back to, are you telling your story properly, right? What's the story? So just give an example. and it's a bit dated, so I'm not sure whether it's still relevant. When one of my investment has been in the chain of eye hospitals called IQ. 2008 is when we first started it. Initially, 6 of us or 7 of us got together. It was supposed to be an I am Ahmedabad batch, except me, everybody else I am Ahmedabad 92 batch or something like that. And we all sort of said, okay, we're going to set up 100 eye hospitals in the tier 2, tier 3 towns. We want to make the new technology accessible. And and we thought we have an amazing thing. We had an amazing team. And it was not easy raising the funds, right? Because you have 2 hospitals and people like, oh, it's just 2 hospitals. We want to see the scale. You know, you are in love with your idea. The point is that others may not be in love with your idea. But I think that's the time when, how many people you talk to and how do you map that what am I doing? Whose portfolio do I fit in properly? And then mapping it and then talking to them accordingly. So we decided that for us, it was more about social impact, which we're delivering. And then our first investment was from Song Advisory, and because that's what they were looking for. And then, the stake was with Helion, and then IFC invested it. So you have to think through that. And as I said, it's the power of communication. We said we are not doing cataract. We're doing is a social impact, taking the latest technology to the tier 2, tier 3 towns. And therefore, people do not need to travel for a cataract to a main town, and how much money is going to get saved. So your narrative shifts. And when narrative shifts, you find supporters. So it's not how hard or easy it is. Do you have something which people will be willing to back you up on?
Interesting. Yes, your story differentiates you, and how do you put your story in the right words differentiate you. So how is the weather, the funding weather, Melinda, in the US? Is the winter still on?
It's cold.
Okay.
It's very cold.
Okay.
So
And when do you see things getting better?
we're going into an election year next year, right?
Okay.
So look, this happens every 4 years. It's the same cycle, but there's uncertainty. People aren't willing to take the risk to be able to say, I'm going to bring down, what we think in terms of revenue objectives for whatever reason. And so they hedge, right? And then you don't necessarily meet commitments. But the market, it's a hard market. Banks and investors are raising LPs. They're bringing in limited partners. They're raising funds. Again, the teams are the ones that are getting funded. The teams that are reputed, that are known, that have had cycles of success. It's the same people that continue to get that funding. So it's a tough market. That's the bottom line. But it's not impossible.
Yeah, so there was a book there's a book which basically talks about the last 500 years of the US and the next 50 years as well, and it says that because the dollar is all-time high, because the inflation is all-time high, because the trillions of dollars are being printed to bail out so many companies and banks, a recession or a depression is on the way, on the card. Is that the feeling on the ground as well?
I mean, I think we are in a recession, right? Quite frankly. I mean, interest rates are at 8.5%. It's high. So
Yes.
Is there going to be more of one? I mean, I think that's relative, right? I think, again, this is the standard cycle. If we look every 4 years, it's the same conversation.
Okay.
I think it's stay focused, work on your products, deliver great product services. Don't get distracted. Right. It's very easy to get distracted by what's happening on external forces.
Brilliant advice. Ashwin, what do you focus on in your business? Where does your time go? So I'm asking this question because I want to understand from a perspective of a founder, where should a founder spend his time?
Yeah, so my time, mainly goes into product development, and then business development. So these are the two things quite important. And between fundraise, but I'm not so expert in fundraise. So I always traditionally build technology, and that's my strength. And I'm still focusing more on that, building business very sustainably, ability to build great products, and by that actually able to stand on your own feet. So that's what I'm just doing now.
I read one statement somewhere. It says, especially for product companies like yours, it says perfection should not be an enemy of progress. So let's say when you're launching a product and you want to launch the perfect product, but the product is never perfect. It always has some bugs. How do you deal with that? How do you launch, or do you want to launch a perfect product? And do you delay your progress because you want to launch a perfect product?
Well, it's actually that's a waterfall model that used to be there. No longer exists. It's quite agile methodology that exists today, and we do work with customers very closely. And the startups cannot really wait for long cycles of release. We need to be continuously serving our customers and bring out the latest technology as early as possible to them. I think one is that you need to, of course, test it really well and make sure that it really works. But other than that, I would say is that don't wait too long. Okay, if you have like 50 features, break it into features like 5 features at a time and release them to the market. So it's very difficult to actually emulate Apple, which does one product release per phone in a year. It's very difficult for us. So we have to actually continuously release the upgrades and also be very agile in actually making it taking it to the customer.
Interesting. So what Ashwin is saying, you don't wait for the perfect product, just launch and you keep improving it as on the go. Thank you, Ashwin, for that. Aman, my next question is to you. Investing can be like predicting the weather, and especially in the health tech industry, right? And because sometimes you invest in startups which are showing you sunny skies, but ultimately what you get is a thunderstorm. How do you balance your risk? What do you check? How do you balance your risk, and how do you react when you are getting a thunderstorm instead of a sunny sky? How do you do that?
I think see, again, you cannot really predict how the startup will do, especially if you are an early stage investor, right? If you're in a late stage, you still may have some bit of a predictability, but in early stage, you cannot. So I think in that time, the more important is, going back to the core in terms of the team and their ability to pivot in case something is not able to work out. How do you pivot from X to Y, and that agility and the perseverance which is required to sort of say, I need to continue to build something because I have a good, core idea, but what I thought was the direction may not be working. So ability to pivot, ability to be agile, to shift the direction sometime, to sort of say, okay, if this is not working, then I need to. I think that's one aspect which is there. Having said that, sometimes you also be perceived saying, if I'm continuing in it just because of the larger external factor, something may not have worked. So continuing on your journey is very, very important. You cannot sort of just hang the boots and saying, okay, I'm done with it. And that can only happen if you have a team of the founders who are very strong. They know what they are, and they have both the technical expertise of what they are. They have the marketing expertise, and they have the people expertise. So these are the things which I usually look for when I'm looking at investments.
Interesting. Malinda, taking question from Aman's answer, he said ability to pivot is very important. But it is very delicate as well. A founder started his company and now it's not working, and investor is saying pivot, palat. Okay. So he has to leave his passion out there and now maybe go to a second idea which perhaps is half-heartedly there, passion is not there. When is the right time to pivot? How somebody would know I should pivot or not pivot? Because there's also a phrase saying that don't dig until the gold and then stop 2 feet before the gold. So when to pivot? How do you take that call as an advisor to a startup?
If it feels right, you have to make a decision. So I believe in decisiveness, right? What's the worst that's going to happen? Made the wrong decision and you're going to course correct and fix it. But the decisiveness is critical. So if the team collectively, and I've done this with teams, right? We had just a specific example. We were working with a large hospital system, and said, look, it's actually not a good partnership. It's like, but this is really good. The logo's great. The partnership would look good. Like your values aren't aligned, right? It's going to be a disaster in 6 months. And so what they want and what you want. And so you make that decision. You can always revisit. But if you don't take that risk because your gut's saying, like the team is collectively united, you've just got to go with it.
But you always would have dissent as well. There are some people who say, no, don't pivot. We're very close. Let's show some perseverance. Let's show some persistence, which will go against the concept of pivoting.
I will say one of the things, so in corporate, having had a long run in corporate, yeah, it would take months and months to influence stakeholders and get everyone, to change. And startups takes 2 phone calls.
Yeah, because don't have so much time. Don't have so much luxury of time for months to discuss pivoting.
And you don't have resources and you don't have budget. So everything is very, very fragile. So you're operating with what you have, right? And so when
you're actually operating with what you don't have also.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So Ashwin, you have been a big philosopher of running businesses, growing businesses the natural way. What's your take on pivoting?
Yeah, I see. Pivoting is very hard. I think we sometimes, it's very costly, first of all. Okay. You can only afford to do it if you are going to go through the grind again in a different way, or you have a budget to do that. Okay. So you are say, you have some cash in the bank to do that. Right. So it's not easy. Okay. Especially, pivoting. And sometimes it also takes, what I say is that evolution rather than the completely changing the thing itself. There is a small, you always evolve as you grow actually and see what works. And there are quite a few different paths which are quite adjacent. And you can just take one of them. It probably lead to a right road for you, right? So, my philosophy is that, when I have seen at least building companies, even in AlgoVision and here, it pays to be having perseverance. Okay, especially in technology business. Technology business is not going to show you the light of the day in a very short time. You need to be good at what you're doing it, and once you are really good at it, that's when people start noticing you. So you need to get to that point, and there is no shortcut to it. You need to really do what you're doing really well. Even with a limited budget, you can get there. Okay, so we had been actually blessed with actually overcoming so many hurdles of the highly funded companies. Okay, where they have a lot of resources, money, time, right? So, but we did it right. We didn't make any mistakes, and we were there. Like, we were the top 5. We were actually winning projects against the top brands, which are very well funded. And I think that only comes with just focusing on what you're doing and doing that really well. That's it.
Interesting. Thank you, Ashwin. Thank you very much. Aman, coming to you again on the PR question. Let's say a startup in the health tech industry wants to do some PR. What should be their budget allocation on the PR? Should it be a function of the revenue, a function of something?
I think it should be a function of the impact they're looking at delivering. Usually at each stage, your needs are very, very different.
Let's say a startup which is 1 year old, has raised some money.
So I think at that time, you're really not looking at reaching out to the masses. My role of a communicator, therefore, is to ensure that my pitch decks, my narrative, my engagement with the investors, my engagement with my team is in the right space. So what you need is a budget just to make that thing happen. And I might want to do a few media releases per se. So you don't need to go out and start becoming a big brand because you're still not out there. When we look at a bigger thing is when you are, I would say, stage 4 or stage 5 of evolution, you already, so I would say 1 year, I am at an angel investment level, right? I'm not even sort of gone into a pre-series A. So at that time, I usually would say, don't even hire a PR agency at that time. You might want to have an in-house person who is able to work along with the founders to get the things in place because agencies cost much more. Okay.
Mhm.
And they have their own overhead. So the last thing I always do, we don't work at that stage at all. Once you reach a when you've done a series A and you're sort of saying, okay, I'm now willing to scale up, is when you would need to possibly hire an agency and need to hire an agency which is a specialist, somebody who understands your language, somebody who understands the science which you're trying to tell, and the one who understands your stakeholders. And that,
Mhm.
again, you don't need a consistent ongoing campaign. What you need is a few spikes in between, right? The spike one, if I'm going for the next one, is I need a spike because investor needs to see me. The
Got it.
second is if I'm taking the product, say, for a regulatory compliance, or if I've got a regulatory approvals and I want to take it to a particular market, I would need a spike. So that's how it is. When you really reach a series C or a series D, when I have established, I'm becoming more mature businesses, when you need an ongoing campaign, because now you're looking at beyond the product. You're looking at, how am I positioning myself? How am I really sort of expanding myself? So at each stage is very different. I'm sort of saying communication is important, but how do you leverage communications and what you bring onto the table will change as per the evolution of an organization.
This is brilliant advice. This is brilliant, Aman. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Uh, Malinda, Aman touched a very interesting and important bit of regulatory compliances, regulatory approvals, especially in the health tech industry. I've talked to a lot of founders. They spend millions of dollars, but they're still waiting for regulatory approvals before they can launch. Is there a secret sauce or a key that you have which can unlock regulatory approval?
Well, if I
How,
knew
how do
it,
you
I
how
mean,
do we expedite it?
I think Arcade's a great example of where we are, working hand in hand with the FDA around research studies. So regulations are changing, and I'm going to speak to the US right now constantly. And so how is it that we stay on top of it? Because then we need to adjust, right? We being the firms, at least that I'm working with, and those that I'm not, very rapidly again. So it's again that ability to pivot, because regulation is changing, but you still have your base product. So typically it's just nuances based on adverse events or other data that's coming out, which is all related to the safety of patients, which should anyways be at the center of anything that's being rolled out. But so to answer your question, is there a fast trick? No, I think AI, and I think what, for example, ZipStack is doing is pretty cool in terms of accelerating cycle time, because medical writing is now being done through AI and different technology tools, right? So it takes off the burden on the workforce to be able to help them. So it's things like that. It's more around cycle time productivity to accelerate.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Malinda. Ashwin, let's talk money a bit. Are you looking to raise money?
Yeah. Mainly for the reason you're talking about regulatory, it's going to cost us a lot.
Okay. Well, but in the previous organizations, what did you raise money, and or were you bootstrapping and pulled the game?
Yeah. So my first company, yes, I mean we bootstrapped, and then like we got an exit. Then I invested in two companies, and I ran the first for some time, grew it into a multi-million-dollar business, and then so there was actually growth budget requirement, definitely. Okay, and but that was again internal, and we are able to actually with that we are able to get to a sizable level, and but here I think healthcare is quite different, because I didn't get into healthcare until last 4 years ago, right? So it was quite different domain for me. But healthcare is a lot of regulatory. We need to actually get the approvals, and different countries have different approval, requirements. And now when the CE has become very hard, it's not easy. MDR is not easy. So considering that, you definitely require good capital, and also getting into US markets, right? So the biggest market in healthcare is the US, and the most profitable. So if you want to get into a good markets, then you require actually again investment. So for these reasons, we definitely like, looking for investment.
Do you think IP will help you raise money if you have some IP?
Yeah. So, but again, IP will be good if you are able to actually, basically come up with regulatory approval. That IP is just an idea, right? So you cannot just sell only IP here. We need to have a product, and that product we need to deploy it and show that we have a market. So all these things should go together. So and so just IP is not going to be enough, but IP is very much required, but just not going to be enough.
Okay. Marinda, if you can give us two strong advice that you would generally give it to your startups where you are on the advisory board. What are the two strong advices that people can draw from this session, which they can go back and use and can grow and scale their businesses as you help your startups? Two strong piece of advisory.
So the first is stand behind your vision, right? So there's a lot more people that are going to knock out an idea and tell you why it'll fail than those that are the believers in it. So I think surrounding yourself, and with that, right, the caveat is surround yourself by the one or two people that will believe and push you to be able to build it. That's one. And two is build a stellar team, right? Just going back to the first one. It just goes back to that. Is again, I've seen it time and time again, right? Team, the product as well. So invest in the right people.
Invest in the right people, stay with the vision.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Melinda, for that. Aman, since you also invest in startups and healthcare, what is more important for you, the team or the product? Team. Why?
Team definitely is the more important part, because while you may have a great product, if the team backing it up does not have the ability to take it forward, the product will fail. Even if the product is average and the team is great, I would sort of say they will have an ability to, scale it up or elevate it to the next level. So the core will be the team for me always.
How are you able to determine the ability of the team?
Okay, so a couple of things. So
what
when you
traits
look at
do you
a
look
team,
for?
couple of things. One, the ability to collaborate, how long they have been working together. Usually teams are the individuals who have been together from their school, college days, know each other's, is very, very important, because they know good, bad, ugly of each one. So they know they need to work. So collaboration is very important. Second is that does each of them bring in a skill set, which is important. Now, who is the person who is going to the team leader? Who is the one who's going to look at from the marketing side? One who's the one saying, I'm with the tech person, I'm the one who's a people person. Each needs to bring in a certain value, which collectively creates an institution. And I think that's when we sit down, we say, okay, what's the role which you will play? What's the role? So it's not that I'm going to be sort of getting on the toes of somebody else. Each of have a very well defined, but they can collaborate together. And that's how the institution and organization gets created.
Brilliant. Excellent. We're in the last round of this session. Ashwin, my question to you is, what are your pieces of advice to upcoming entrepreneurs in the health tech industry? What do you advise them?
Well, there are tons of problems to be solved in health tech. Pick the right problem. It's very important that you pick the right problem. Pick the little harder problem here, because it's important that there are some problems which are not been attempted or not been really. It takes time to actually solve that problem. It's good to solve a difficult problem, because there's a very good value in solving a difficult problem. If you are really good at solving a good problem, I think you should pick that. Pick a larger problem, and because in healthcare, definitely there are so many problems which are not being addressed, for the large population. So just pick that, and also on the market side, we should also look at which problem to apply which market. Okay, so not every problem may not be applicable to all the markets. So you should also pick the market as well when you pick the problem.
Interesting. So taking cue from Ashwin's answer, Malinda, he's saying pick a big problem, pick a large problem, pick up a hard problem. Versus picking up, there's a dichotomy between picking up a hard problem versus picking up a small problem and solving it beautifully. What would you prefer? What advice would you give to your entrepreneurs?
A big problem.
Big problem is a small problem, yeah.
I think it depends on the nature of the problem, right? So I always say, when Jeff Bezos started Amazon, what did he want to do? He wanted to get books to people locally, right? He wasn't thinking, about the number of what Amazon has now become. It varies, right? I say start small, but know the impact is massive, right? So for example, we're touching about 30 million people's lives through the Advanced Health Academy app at full scale, right? We've started with 300 people, but we know we have the roadmap on how to get to a percentage of the total US population, which is 337 million individuals, right? And that's just domestic. So it's, the opportunity and the vision's there, but you start with small. You start with local communities. Hopefully that's
Brilliant.
helpful.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Malinda. Any last final words from you, Aman, that you on topic that you feel like talking about?
No, I think Ashwin and Melinda has covered, but I think one thing which I personally believe that health, anything which any of us do in this space is not about business, because health goes beyond the business. It's touching the lives of the people, and therefore any individual who wants to come in and say that I have a role to play or I'm going to add value needs to understand it's not about business. Start from what your purpose is. And I think if you can define your purpose, and the purpose could be very simple, one-liner saying, I would like to take, and I think I'm just taking what Melinda said. It's not about the scale first. It's about, I'm here to make a difference in the lives of people. And if you are able to then do it, the scale will automatically happen.
Brilliant, brilliant. I think this is again a great advice. Guys, thank you very much for being here. Such a nice and wonderful panel. None of you shied away from giving away your secret sauce and your knowledge, and you were truly givers. You could add value to so many entrepreneurs who are listening to us and will be listening to us in the 1 month to come, when we will snippet out these videos in different forms on different channels. Thank you so much. Truly grateful to you and for your time. Thank you very much again for coming on this panel.
Thank you, Amit.
Thank you.
Ashwin. Thank you,
Thank you,
Melinda.
Malinda. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye.